The New Orleans Saints, Schrodinger's football team. Ladies and gentlemen, this is from Bootleg Football. Now, this video was requested to me on a few different comments and in my subreddit, but my God, this is a long video, 1 hour and 7 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we would have to do this in 4 different parts. So we're going to skip around a pretty good bit. We're not going to talk about the fantasy football section of this. And I mean, we're not a fantasy football channel. We're not going to talk about the entire staff. We will, when they talk about Kubiak and all that stuff, but once they start talking about like wide receiver coaches, we're getting the hell out of there. So we're going to skip around a little bit here, and we're going to try and watch as much of the video as possible. So thank you for requesting this, and let's go ahead and get into it, shall we?
It's going to be a weird episode today because we're talking about a very weird team.
Yeah.
I really don't know if they're good or not. I don't even think Saints fans know if they're good or not. If you watch this team last year, it was, I wouldn't even say it's a roller coaster because they were just so confusing. Like, I wouldn't even call it inconsistent. They were so confusing because they were so good and so bad at the same time.
I think confusing, I think they are a confusing team because if you look at the Saints, and this is kind of where people get confused even during my videos, where the team, if you look at the team, and you look at other, like, what you would consider bad teams. So if you look at whoever you want to pick, Patriots or the Panthers or whoever, if you look at even like the Giants, if you look at those teams, you can look at the roster and say like, okay, this is a pretty weak roster. Like, okay, I see where the problems are here. You look at the Saints and it's like, well, I do see some problems, like the offensive line and defensive line, I suppose, but there are names here. Like, there is talent here. This roster is good. And not only is the roster good, not only do I believe there's talent, but I have seen this roster be talented. I have seen Chris Olave be good. I have seen Marshawn Lattimore be good. I have seen Tyrann Mathieu be good. I have seen Demario Davis be good. I've seen Alvin Kamara be good, right? So looking at that team, it can be confusing. Like, well, why aren't they producing? Why aren't they getting the results? And if you look at the season and 9-8 and just how everything played out, it can be kind of a weird thing for Saints fans to sit back and say, like, okay, what do we have here? Like, what is the picture? What is the big picture? Is the big picture we need to rebuild? Is the big picture that last year was kind of just a whoopsie poopsie and to trust the process, then we have a good foundation? You know, like what are we actually doing here?
They were incredibly frustrating. They were an analytics darling that just couldn't win games they were supposed to win. There was a lot to praise about them, but so much to criticize. You know, there was a lot of turnover in the offseason in terms of the coaching staff, which probably explains some of that. But yeah, I would say this is going to be one of the hardest episodes to do because I truly don't know what I'm looking at with the Saints. Like, you could sell me on 11 games and winning the division. You could sell me on they're cleaning house at the end of the year. Like, I got nothing.
It's a funny team to watch, and by funny Saints fans, I don't mean funny ha-ha. I mean,
I think the only thing you couldn't really sell me on is that this team is as close to a rebuild or as close to the dumpster as people say they are. Like, whenever we've covered this in past videos, but when I see lists of like top 32 teams and the Saints come in at like 29, it's like there's no way we're a bottom 5 team. There's no way we're a bottom 3 team. There's no way we're one of the 2 worst teams. When people throw us down there, that's when I'm like, okay, that's out of control. Now, if you told me they're the 20th best team, okay, sure. If you told me they're the 15th best team, okay, we can have a conversation about that. But it's the same thing with Carr, where do I think Carr is a great quarterback? No. Do I think he's anywhere between 14 to 18? Yes. Do I think he's 28th best quarterback in the NFL? No. You know, like that's insane. So the Saints in away from New Orleans, away from the NFC South, they are right now kind of irrelevant. Right? They're no one's watching them, no one's talking about them. So I think sometimes what happens with these lists and these rankings is that people just had to fill in slots, and they'll look at the Saints and they're like, I don't know what the hell's going on there. Dennis Allen's still back, Derek Carr is still back, good enough for me. Throw him at 27, and that's like all the analysis you get. But if you dig a little deeper, I don't think they're as bad. I don't think they're as close to a rebuild. You can sell me on 11 wins. You can sell me on 10 wins. You can sell me on 9 wins. You can sell me on 8 wins. You can't sell me on 4 wins or 5 wins.
Odd, because we'll talk about a bunch of numbers that point to them being outstanding or should have been. We'll point to a bunch of numbers which do not. Quarterback play was the same way. Had some moments of, oh, wow, yeah, they can absolutely beat anybody. And some moments of, I don't think they could beat the local high school team today.
Yeah.
It's an up and down team. They're going to have to find some consistency. I think our best hope for the episode is just to present the facts and let everybody make their own conclusions.
That's what I try and do. That's what I do.
If we make conclusions right now, we're probably just going to be wrong.
I'll tell you right now, this episode is going to be very hopeful for Saints fans and also very critical at the same time.
There you go.
I don't know
Sounds
if
like
we're
me.
going to help them parse
I have
out
seen
what
this
their
guy
favorite
before.
team is. Again,
I have seen this cat before. I don't know where. I don't know if he does stuff like the Action Network. I've seen this fella somewhere besides this YouTube channel.
we're just going to present the data. We're going to present the facts. We're going to talk about some of the changes they made in the coaching staff that may or may not improve things in 2024. All I'll say is this is one of the only actual wild card teams in the league. And I don't mean wild card in terms of like
Wild card playoffs.
wild card playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm talking wild card in the sense that I really don't know what we're going to get in a good and a bad way. So, again, Saints fans, hunker down. Big episode today.
All right, I'm
It's your
locked
day
and loaded.
today, of course.
I'm excited.
Jay, Autumn, Anthony, roll the intro.
We have an intro. We got the suds, the booze. All right, hitting it hard. I see. Great pour. Great pour. You know, a little beer fact here. A lot of people say they don't like if you pour a beer and you have a bunch of foam or whatever. There's like it's a bad pour. But actually, the way you're supposed to pour beer, here's a little fact for you, ladies and gentlemen, is you're supposed to have your glass and you're supposed to pour the beer like almost violently, like let it come out of the bottle violently into the glass, get as much foam as possible, and then let it sit. Because if you do that, then you're not drinking as much air. And if you're not drinking as much air, it's a better beer. So if you're trying to pour and make as little suds as possible, it's actually a bad pour. So next time you pour beer, let the chopper sing. Let Chiquita speak. Pour the beer, let it slosh into the glass, get a big foam situation here, and then let it kind of go down and then pour the rest and do it that way. I'm telling you that it's like a reverse thing. Like we've been pouring beer the whole wrong this whole time.
Welcome back once again to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm Brett. That's EJ. Talking Saints today from up here in the Pacific Northwest, out here on the water in the Puget Sound from Anderson Island.
The
It's a
PNW.
beautiful day.
Big shouts.
Obviously, we thought about going outside to shoot this episode, but unfortunately, there is a breakfast buffet for a lot of seagulls going on right now, and they're being very
Classic.
loud about it. So we're shooting inside.
Audio's a little bit easier in here, but yeah, it's showing off. Glad it gets to while
Picturesque
you're up here.
studio.
You don't think it's
And a
all
beautiful
gray,
studio
doom and
to
gloom.
be,
Of course, we can tell
filming
everybody it's
podcasts.
all gray,
My
doom
God.
and gloom. Don't move here. It's always awful.
I mean, this looks pretty
Yes,
nice.
if there's one thing Pacific Northwesterners love the most, it's gatekeeping where they live, so that the rest of us Californians don't come up here.
And when you say the rest, because so many of you are already here.
I mean, have you seen the home prizes in California?
I have.
Where else are we going to live, EJ, other than the rest of the country? Driving up
Brother,
everybody
let's
else's
get to the
property
football.
values.
It's an
That's
hour
what
and
we do
7
best.
minutes.
All right, talking Saints today.
Yes.
Before I go down a real estate doom
Rabbit
and
hole.
gloom rabbit hole. Before we get into all the existential crisis and everything like that. All right. Actually, no. Today it probably is an existential crisis if I think about it, because Saints fans went through a lot of shit last year.
We did.
I know they won 9 games. They were knocking on the door of the playoffs. They finished the year strong. But even Saints fans would say when they were watching this team that it just didn't feel right.
Yes, the team last year was miserable to watch. The team last year was ass. The team last year was inept. We couldn't do anything. We scored 1 touchdown in the opening possession of a game, or we scored a touchdown in the opening possession of a game once. We had multiple games. We had like 40 yards passing at halftime. We were terrible. We were absolutely horrific last year. No doubt about it.
It didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like a lot of the strength metrics that we're going to talk about translated to their every Sunday experience on the field. It was a very different feel. It was more tenuous. It was more up and down. It was more, I'm not sure what we're going to get today. And that's not a great feeling to have as a football fan. I don't know that we're going to quell any of those fears and say that it's not going to happen again in 2024 today. We'll start by talking about what happened in 2023. That sets the stage. We won't spend too long on it because you all watched it. And then we'll go into the changes they made to try and check the boxes off to fix those things so that it doesn't happen again, or at least they all don't happen again. So you don't just get a carbon copy of last season, which would not be super fun.
No, that would not be awesome.
I want to give a little caveat, by the way, for all the stats you're about to hear. The Saints did have, tied with the Falcons, of course, the easiest strength of schedule in the league. So you're going to hear a lot of positive numbers today. But keep in mind, they played a lot of really, really bad teams. I want to say their strength of schedule was like around 425, 430, somewhere in that ballpark. I know it was under 450. So very few times last year did they actually face a quote-unquote good team. And they put up some really nice numbers as a result of that. But at the same time, those numbers were, what's the word? Not deceiving. Juiced?
They come with context.
They come with context.
They come with nuance. So
as all stats do. All stats do come with context.
2023 Saints, overall record 9-8 against that easy schedule. Second in the division, 5-3 at home, 4-5 on the road, very balanced. Last 5 games, and this is usually a cause for hope, 4-1. Teams that finish strong down the stretch tend to have a better season the next year than teams that don't. We'll see if that holds true for the Saints. So we've got an effectiveness summary for you this year, and it's really 2 numbers. Last year, we introduced you to Power Score. This year, we're going to introduce you to a metric called QBS, or quarterback support. I came up with it a couple of months ago with Arjun Menon from PFF. It's 5 statistics that really set the table for how well should a team have done. Power Score is how well they actually did. QBS says, given all the things that you had on offense, there's 3 offensive ranks, a defensive rank, and a special teams rank. How good was this team around the quarterback? How well did you set the table for them to win games? So it's a 0 to 100 scale, 100 the best, 0 the worst. The Saints were a 64.5. That placed them 12th out of 32 teams. That's pretty darn good for a team that didn't win its division. That's a lot of support. As we transition to Power Score, we introduced it to it last year. 6 statistics: rushing offense, rushing defense, passing defense, points scored, and points allowed. We simply assign the team their league rank. Were they 10th? Were they?
So, this sounds about right. Like, if you were to ask me, like, because the Saints were so close to being a playoff team. And if you're a playoff team, you're probably somewhere in that 12th. You know, if you're one of the last, like if you're one of the weaker playoff teams, you're somewhere in that like 12th in the league kind of world. So the Saints missed out on the playoffs because of a tiebreaker, you know, or Derek Carr busted his shoulder, however you want to look at it. So yeah, I think they're probably 12th. And this is why when people are like, last year was the worst season I can remember as a Saints fan, blow it up, fire Dennis Allen, fire Gail Benson, fire Mickey Loomis, sell the team. It's like, man, I mean, you know, I know the results weren't great, but everything else was kind of chill, you know. And I say it all the time, but how much different would the narrative be around the Saints if they were a 10-win division champion last season? It's probably a good thing long term that we weren't, because if we're a 10-win division champion, we probably don't fire Pete Carmichael. You know, you probably don't lose your entire coaching staff, and we definitely needed to do that. So another thing with these stats is that the Saints were very peaks and valleys, even on defense. There were some times that we had the best defense in the NFL. There were some games, like the Patriots game, even like the Titans game, where you could just tell the defense was playing at an absolutely elite level. But then there was that time in the middle of the season where the defense was terrible, where Josh Dobbs looked like prime Cam Newton, you know, where Tyson Bagent was running all over us, where Baker Mayfield was running all over us. I mean, there was some games there in the middle, even the first half against Indianapolis. Like, how many games did we have a horrible first half defensively, and then we gave up 0 or 3 points in the second half? It happened almost every game. Every game, it was like, wow, well, all right, we're down 28-0, and then the defense figures it out, and we make an adjustment, and we're the best defense ever. So long term, that's how you get these good averages. But we were way too peaks and valleys, way too peaks and valleys. The offense is the same way, where there were some games we were probably the 32nd ranked passing offense. And then there were some games we were probably, top 5 passing offense, and then it averages out to 15 or whatever. So the Saints were analytically, I think that's why some of the numbers can be deceiving.
They're 15th. Everybody wants to be first in all those, but of course they can't be. Saints were 19th in rushing offense, 15th in passing offense. Great rush defense.
The rushing had no peaks. The rushing was all valleys. All valleys all the time.
Top 10 team. Points scored, 9th. We'll talk about how that's a little bit deceiving. And points allowed, 8th. So a lot of single-digit numbers in there. A lot of top 10 numbers for a team that, again, didn't feel like a top 10 team for most of the year. The asterisks on points scored, they were right at the middle of the league until they played the Falcons and hung 45 on them at the end of the year.
Not even 45, 48.
48.
It was 48-17. They dumped on them in the last week, right? They were dead-ass average in terms of points scored at 16th. That bumped them all the way up to 10th in terms of points per game. So, yeah, again, I don't want to say it's deceiving because
I'd be okay saying they're middle of the road. Like if you said, hey, we're going to kind of, take that with a grain of salt. The Falcons game at the end there, let's just say they're middle of the road on points per game. I'd say, okay, fine.
You don't get to those types of numbers by accident, but at the same time, they did beat the hell out of some pretty bad teams last year, like 34-0 against the Patriots.
Yeah,
that happened. They played against the Titans. They played against the Falcons, who were not good last year. We talked about them yesterday about how much they underperformed relative to the quality of their roster. And I would guess the mark of a good team is beating the crap out of bad teams. But
at the end of the day, like the schedule was weak for sure, but you do have to just beat who's in front of you. Like I think you got to kind of do both. On one hand, you do have to recognize, like, hey, look, you played 10 backup quarterbacks, but you also have to say, like, well, you beat them. Like they're in front of you, they're on the schedule. You have no choice who you're playing. You got to go beat them. So I don't think it's fair when a team has a weak schedule to only penalize them. The schedule is the schedule. It is what it is. Was it weaker? Yes, but you got to win those games. So like when people throw the schedule at me, I always say, well, ask Atlanta how it went. Just because you have an easy schedule doesn't mean you're going to win all the games.
And you would expect against the worst
Atlanta lost to Carolina
schedule for them to have done that more. And I think overall that's what frustrated Saints fans last year, and especially frustrated them with the offensive staff, is like Saints fans knew they were playing against bad teams. Like they pay attention to the rest of the league.
Sure.
Like Saints fans are actually one of the fan bases that I think pays the most attention to what's going on outside of New Orleans. They knew they were playing against bad teams, and I think the whole time they were thinking, why aren't we murdering everybody? Like, it just felt like this team vastly underperformed for what they should have been.
Interestingly enough, and here's where the contradiction comes in. So when you take those 6 ranks from Power Score and you average them out, their Power Score was 10.5. Lower is better in Power Score. Everybody wants to be number 1. That was the 6th overall best Power Score in the league.
And it just didn't feel like it. Like when you're watching their games, that's why this team is so weird.
Exactly, but they set the table at 12th for QBS. They were 12th in terms of how they should have done, and they were 6th in terms of how they did do. So they actually overperformed, which is, again, backwards.
Now, see, I think that makes sense because the Saints, the fact that they almost walked into a division championship with how bad Pete Carmichael was, with how bad they were in the first half of games and how bad they were on the first possession of games and how bad their red zone offense was at the beginning of the season, how bad their running game was, how bad their offensive line was. Like when you factor all that in and you're like, well, they lost on a tiebreaker. They almost won the division. That's wild. So if you told me like, yeah, okay, I would believe that they overachieved. I was just having a conversation in the comments section, and I kind of was making this argument where the comment said something like, as long as we have Derek Carr, we'll be 7-10. And I was like, we went 9-8 last year. Like, think about everything that went wrong. Everything that went wrong last year. Couldn't run the football. Horrible offensive line. Horrible offensive coordinator. Carr got hurt twice. All of that. Like, everything that could have possibly went wrong. we've done what we could to address all of it. We've done what we could to address the pass rush, the non-existent pass rush. We've done what we could to address the offensive line. We've done what we could to address the offensive staff. So if we went 9-8 with what we agree was a bad team, or at least a bad scheme and a bad performance and all that stuff, we agree that we went 9-8, almost won the division there. Unless we just fail across the board on all of these seemingly upgrades we've made, we have to be better than we were last year. It kind of shows the talent of the team. I got an eyelash about to rip my retina open, but we don't edit on this channel. We don't edit here. I mean, I might go blind. This might be a Helen Keller situation, ladies and gentlemen. But the fact that we went 9-8 shows the talent level of the team, that it could drag. And look at Atlanta. I mean, I hate to keep saying this. Look at how quote-unquote talented Atlanta's roster is. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, whatever. Everyone loves Atlanta. All those talented players couldn't drag that team over 7 wins. Couldn't drag them to beating Carolina. All right. So what does it say about the Saints? I think if you're a Saints fan, you got to feel good. You got to feel good at the performance that was given last year. The upgrades that were made, whether it was on the defensive line, offensive line, coaching staff, whatever, going into the season. I mean, it is kind of a perfect storm setup for us to where we could have some decent success this year.
Win team.
It doesn't feel like that at all. So here's where the Saints get really weird and contradictory, right? Most teams that we say, oh, they were up and down and they were inconsistent, and you'd say, oh, well, they should have done this well and they actually did this well. The Saints, it's reversed. They set the table at the 12th best level in the league, and they performed at the 6th best level in the league.
This is a team that breaks every statistical model.
Yes.
The New Orleans Saints, which honestly, if you watch a lot of NFC South football, shouldn't shock you because the NFC South never makes sense. This team really does not make sense.
Yeah, typically any team that has a top 10 defense, we're among the top 10 in points scored. Any of those teams, that's a top 10 team, not languishing near 500, and the Saints were the latter.
Now, hearing all of that, I'm sure Saints fans are then wondering, okay, how?
What the hell, man?
Like, what can we point to give us some sort of context of what the hell was even going on last year? Again, the offensive staff was mostly replaced, and we'll get into some of the names who did that, but I want to talk about what they did last year specifically, or rather what caused them the most problems last year specifically from a schematic perspective and a data perspective on offense, right? So Kubiak and Benton are coming in probably to import, a Kubiak Shanahan style. Klint is Gary's son. Kyle used to coach under Gary. Gary used to coach under Kyle's dad. So, family business going multiple generations, right? So we expect a lot of the wide zone stuff, a lot of the play action stuff, lots of deep crosses.
Yep, we've covered all that.
John Benton, he coached with Kyle in San Francisco for a while. He was the offensive line coach there. So they're going to install that type of offense, right?
Yes.
Pretty wildly different, I would say, to what they did last year.
Incredibly
under Carmichael and his staff, which was mostly cleaned out. I would say the hallmark of the Saints offensively last year was getting to the red zone and then completely stalling out. They were 8th in terms of red zone trips per game at 3.5. That's really good, by the way. If you're getting into the red zone 3 to 4 times per game, you expect to score a lot of points. But at the same time, they only scored touchdowns on 53% of those red zone trips, which was well below average in the league. So they would give them.
I mean, it's obvious what happened. If you watch the games, it's pretty obvious. We can move the football, but when we got in the red zone, the offense completely changed. I think Carmichael, I think he's a clown. But if I was trying to really be nice, I would say what happened was he got really conservative in the red zone, and he was really afraid to take chances. So what we saw a lot in the red zone was a lot of running, a lot of run, a lot of Taysom, a lot of, hey, let's just pound the football, maybe spring one, see what happens. But when you do that in the red zone, you are almost playing for field goals. And then if we threw the ball, we would throw the ball to the corners, or we'd throw the ball in the fade routes where we weren't using the middle of the field because I think he was concerned about throwing interceptions. So the offense stalled. it was a completely different offense in the red zone. Completely different. And until the end of the season, that's how it went. So if you look at games like Atlanta, where we kicked 6 field goals, you look at like a game like Houston, where we relied on Blake Grupe, Green Bay, where we relied on Blake Grupe, it's all the same. Where, if we were just a little better in the red zone at the early part of the year, or and that matters. Like that. That's why I always say, like, passing yards per game and stats like that with no context, it's hard to kind of get a read on how good a team is because of the stats. Because you can throw for 99 yards a drive, and that sounds awesome. That sounds sweet. But if you kick a field goal and you can't get that last 1 yard, there's 99 passing yards every drive. It really isn't that sweet. Like, you got to punch it in. And the Saints just couldn't do that. The Saints were bad in those spots. So, and that's one of those things that I would think is going to get fixed.
Themselves opportunities and then completely flame out. So they were, trading 3s for 7s, so to speak. It also kind of explains why their EPA was so high, because it's expected points added.
Yeah.
It doesn't measure actual points scored.
Yes.
So that's how you end up with like top 10 APAs, but you're hanging, dead average in terms of points scored until the last game of the year when you put up 48. They were 12th in most passing and receiving categories that matter last year, except for yards after the catch. So it felt like everything they got was because of, Derek Carr pushing the ball down the field. They were not a team, that was just going to make something happen in space and kind of, just kind of get cheap, easy yards. It just felt like everything.
And that is what this new offense is going to do. And what he's about to say here, like every yard had to be earned, that's exactly what it felt like last year. It felt like every 10 yards was like, moving heaven and the earth.
Thing was hard. They were second to last in terms of yards after the catch per reception at only 3.5, which is not good at all.
Yeah.
They were absolutely dead last in terms of play action usage. When I say that things are going to change under Kubiak, that's one of the big numbers. Like they are.
Those are two great examples, right? Like we were dead last or whatever he said in yards after the catch. The 49ers are first. We're dead last in play action. The 49ers are first. So just that alone, like think about the difference in what you're going to watch with just that. From going from dead last in play action to all of a sudden we're doing more play action than anyone in the league. And let's just say like, well, James, how do you know we're going to be number 1? Let's just say we're top 5. You go from the dead last in play action to top 5 in play action. Dead last in yards after the catch, the top 5. Like those things right there, that makes a huge difference. Huge difference. I cannot put enough emphasis on how different the team will look just schematically than last year.
Are going to be a heavy play action team because that's the world he comes from. They were also the second lowest in terms of motion percentage at only 37%. Again, that is going to increase a lot just because of the world that Kubiak and Benton come from. Tackle, I would say, was their obvious weak spot last year. They did address that in the draft, and we'll get to Fuaga and all that. But when you combine, I would say, a static, not innovative offense whatsoever that puts everything on Derek Carr's plate because, again, we are not using any sort of play action to open up the middle of the field. We have bad tackle play. We struggle to convert in the red zone. Like, I now kind of understand a little bit more how their EPA was so good, but their actual effectiveness was so bad.
Yeah, again, it's easy. And that's what look. First time I watched one of their videos, these guys, but I love what I'm hearing so far because these guys, they get it. Like they're talking ball, they understand what's going on here. They get it. They get the idea of like, well, here's a hypothesis. Like here's the situation: high EPA, low actual points per game. Like how is all this possible? And they dig into it and they find the answer, and it's all true. Like when you look at everything. And you're like, well, we had a really stagnant offense. We were the last in play action, last in motion, last in this, bad tackle play. And somehow we still squeezed out whatever it was, a top 5 EPA or a top 10 EPA or any of that stuff. Like it just shows the talent level of the team.
They were the team that almost got there over and over and over again, which must have been just a fucking nightmare for Saints fans to watch last year. Because again, every week you're like, how are we losing? How is this even remotely possible?
Let's take a look at something. All right, so this is last year, obviously. This is the schedule from last year. So let's look at some of these games. So if you look at the Tennessee game, All right, we have 6 points at halftime. Okay. Then you look at the Carolina game. We have 6 points at halftime. But all field goals so far. Green Bay. Green Bay was a little different because we jumped up big, but we didn't score in the second half. We all know what happened there. Tampa Bay, we had 3 points at halftime. Let's see. New England's a little different, obviously. Houston, we have 10 points at halftime. Actually pretty strong there. So Houston was our first, or was it Carolina? Or I guess it was Green Bay. It was Green Bay. But if you look at all these games, let's see, Jacksonville, we had 6 points at halftime. Indianapolis was a wild game. Chicago was a good game for us as well. Minnesota, we had 3 points at halftime. The Thanksgiving Atlanta game, we had 9 points at halftime on three field goals. Detroit, we had 7 points at halftime. Carolina again, that was a good game. New York, this is when we kind of turn things around. But do you see what's happening here? Like at the beginning of the year, it is frustrating and it's impossible to win games or to be consistent or whatever when you're scoring 6, 3, and 9 points in the first half every single game. Every game. And then like I mentioned, where when we started to struggle, like we had a top whatever defense, right? We had a top whatever they said, top 8 defense. This is Josh Dobbs. Like they had what's their yards per play? Is it on here? 5.7 yards a play against Josh Dobbs. Okay? So I understand what you're saying about like, oh, this defense was great. I think the defense was great. But if you look at this, if you look at when they weren't great and how not great they were at times, like this is the peaks and valleys. You look at the Buccaneers game. The Buccaneers, 5.3 yards a play. And this is in New Orleans. This is at home. Again, we had 9 points the whole game. We had 3 field goals. You know, like this is the difference. When you're looking around and you're saying like, well, how were they 9-8? How did this happen? And if I told you, I mean, we went through a ton of games there. And if I told you, well, in 7 of your 17 games, you're going to have less than 10 points at halftime, and in 6 of your 17 games, you're not going to score a touchdown. You're not going to score a touchdown in the first half. You would think like, damn, we're probably the worst team. Oh, and also, you will never have a running back go over 80 yards the entire season. Kamara against New England was our highest single-player rusher at 80 yards. That is nuts. That is absolutely insane that all that can happen. So, yeah, when we figured it out, things were cool. But up here, and what's even crazier, like Tennessee, we had 6 points at halftime. We won the game, right? I mean, some of these games are, but like Houston, we could have easily won this game. Jacksonville, obviously, we could have won this game. And we had 6 points at halftime. Like, this is sickening. We had 9 points going into the fourth quarter. We didn't score a touchdown going into the fourth quarter, and we could have won this game. That is wild. That's wild. You know, like, those are the things. 5.9 yards per play given up. 5.9 yards given up. Didn't score a touchdown to the fourth quarter, and we're a Foster Moreau catch away. So, you know, it is a weird team, and it's a weird if you're not paying attention. But if you really look at what happened, and you look at just how bad we were when we were bad, like how bad we were on opening possessions, how bad we were on in the first half of games, how bad our defense was at certain times.
Execution was such a thing for them last year in terms of, yes, they'd complete the pass, and no, they'd get no more yards after that. And so you'd see it's almost like the first 2/3 of what you need to do on any given play. And then you're like, and break a tackle and spin out, get 6 more yards down the sideline. Nope. They would get exactly the chunk sort of as expected when you talk about EPA. Yes, we completed the pass, went down. It was almost like they were just stacking, Legos or bricks, right? But they never got that big explosion where somebody comes, just wipes the table off and gives you 7 points. So They would work and work and work.
I know I keep pausing these guys a lot, but the Saints were the embodiment of, they had a completion for 8 yards. And it's like, man, that's good, right? Like, it's good. We're passing the ball, we're throwing the ball, 8-yard completion is good. Problem was, it was 3rd and 10, and we're punting. That was the Saints, where, like he said, 2/3 of what we were doing was good. Completion, 8 yards, all that stuff's cool. Situationally, game-wise, not good.
Work and work. They would get to the red zone, and then it wouldn't work. Wouldn't break the tackle. They'd have to settle for 3, right? They'd be like, well, we got there, which is 2/3 of the expectation, but we didn't score, right? We completed the pass, but we didn't get, the extra 20 yards on the long crosser that we hoped to have. It was just like, we get this, it's expected. We get this, it's expected. That's a tough way to play football.
There was like a comical amount of consecutive red zone trips they had in the middle of the year where they didn't score a touchdown. I can't remember the exact number. Saints fans, you'll have to chime in the comments, but like, I guarantee you some of them have it like on the top of their head, because it was everything it was the only thing I would say that people were talking about in like New Orleans sports talk radio for like a solid 3 to 4 week stretch of like, how are they constantly stalling out?
I remember seeing that statistic at that time and going,
I mean, we had to kick more field goals than anyone else in the league.
Accidentally score a touchdown one time.
Because I watched a lot of the Saints games, not every single one, not in full, not every down of every game. And I was like, I don't remember seeing one, but, I didn't watch all the play. Really? Is that true?
It was like 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Where they didn't get any.
It's like
I think the worst thing was the opening possession. Not scoring on the opening possession for like 15 straight weeks.
Talking about all of the new faces on this coaching staff, by the way, not just Kubiak and Benton, but really the remaking of the whole offensive staff, which, unfortunately was very necessary. Carmichael was there forever, but it was very clear last year that change was coming and change was needed, and a lot of changes happened.
So I had this question as well. Someone asked me, how was Carmichael given 2 years? Like, how did that even happen? If you really think about it, like, think about you're in Loomis's shoes. Sean, you have the best offense in the NFL over a 15-year time. Like, consistently one of the best offenses in the NFL for almost 2 decades. You won a Super Bowl with it, multiple NFC title appearances with it, multiple divisions with it, all that stuff. Brought you to relevancy, completely changed the franchise, completely changed the city, completely changed everything. All right. Who you think is the second in command offensively has been in the building that entire time in Pete Carmichael. Sean Payton is obviously the top guy, but his second in command, Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, is still there. Anybody would think, okay, well, let's just see if Carmichael can do it himself. Like, let's just see if he can do it. That we have been sweet for 15 years with this offense. He has been the offensive coordinator for 15 years. Same building. He's been chilling. Maybe he can keep it going. So they let him do it. Well, what happens? You get some injuries, right? Jameis gets hurt. People are hurt all over the place. Dalton's playing. So then you think, okay, well, that was kind of a weird year, kind of a weird situation. Now we're going to go get Derek Carr. Now we're going to go get a tried and true veteran quarterback. So it would kind of make sense for you to be like, let's see if Pete can figure it out with a veteran who's not hurt. This. Let's just see if he can do it. I give Mickey a lot of credit that after 2 years of that, he could say, this ain't it. This ain't it. Because Carmichael had some serious tenure. 15 years, serious tenure. And you lose in the division on a tiebreaker. Now, I have a sneaky feeling Carmichael never wanted the job. He never wanted to be the OC. We've heard rumors about that. So I think after 2 years of just him struggling, I think Carmichael would have resigned if Loomis doesn't fire him. I think Carmichael would have said, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. The same for me. So that's a different conversation for a different day. But that's how Carmichael got the 2 years. That's how he got 2 years there. And it's crazy that it was only 2 years. We're very lucky it's only 2 years. But if you look at it if you take 20 steps back and look at it that way, it's not hard to imagine why Loomis would give him a couple years.
Things can match you fast in the NFL. Again, Carmichael, one of the longest tenured coaches in the NFL with one organization, but didn't keep up. And the results, it's a results-based business. If you don't do what you need to do, it's a meritocracy. You're eventually going to get moved out. Saints made that choice. In terms of long tenured folks at the top, Mickey Loomis also has been with my organization for seemingly forever as the GM of the Saints. Dennis Allen's been there longer than you.
It's so crazy to think Loomis was simultaneously the GM of the Saints and the Pelicans. That is crazy.
You'd think.
Like, imagine what his email inbox looks like. He's running 2 professional sports teams. That is crazy.
Comes up with some very solid results. I wouldn't say spectacular, but solid. You talked about Klint Kubiak coming in as the offensive coordinator. First year as the Saints OC, was with San Francisco last year as the passing game specialist. 11th year coaching in the NFL. He was a safety at Colorado State.
Yeah, I think at that time his dad was still coaching the Broncos back in the day, which, I mean, back in the day for me was Gary Kubiak, Texans coach, and then he went to the Broncos, and now it's been long enough that that is back in the day, where his son's been in the NFL for 11 years since then. So I am ancient, I guess, just withering away over here.
Yeah, I'm sure you're farting dust as we speak. Defensive coordinator Joe Woods, we won't talk about him a lot. It's his second year. Last year was his first, and it was incredibly successful. Special teams coach Darren Rizzi. On offense, some of the notable assistants, Rick Dennis.
All right, we're going to skip ahead a little bit, see what they say about Kubiak and whatnot.
Tyreek, and of course, like Tyreek smokes everybody, but you kind of got a good look at Keith Williams and the drills he puts guys through in the offseason.
With the Saints as a coach. Now,
Been there forever.
That makes you feel old. Played 9 years in the NFL.
As they were, should have been more productive, should have been even better, and I think they're trying to get them up to the level that they know they can play at. And then on the offensive line, like, obviously a change needed to be made there. So yes. I think it's a strong hiring season for their, like, I don't know the best way to phrase it. I just think that their assistants now are better than their assistants last year.
Yeah, agreed.
And
agreed.
Maybe
100%.
that will go a long way towards getting this team to play like they should be able to play, or at least put up results that they should be able to put up. And that in itself is a great transition to our underdog top 3, because this entire segment.
All right, so we're skipping the entire fantasy portion. We don't talk about fantasy football and all that stuff here, so we're going to skip that part.
With all that being said, let's get to March. Let's get to free agency. You know, everything this team did to
Because they wanted him to.
Not because they wanted him to, yeah.
But again.
All right, losses, not that big of a deal, right? Michael Thomas, we knew he had to go. Marcus May, good, but it is what it is. Eno Benjamin, who cares? Isaac Yiadom, Jameis Winston, and Zach Bond. Zach Bond played all right towards the end of the year, but nothing crazy there from a free agent's loss is concerned.
All those guys have moved on. Eno Benjamin, one of our favorites who's bounced around and hasn't found a home, is also no longer a Saint. Isaac Yiadom, the corner, is with the 49ers. Jameis Winston, I don't know how to classify Jameis Winston's tenure with the Saints, but he is now with the Browns. Zach Bond, a linebacker who I think moved to a better place. I
had Pete playing tackle last year. He's not a tackle, he's a guard. But they were just kind of in that situation where they had to do it. Results weren't good.
No, they were looking for their best 5, and they want a different best 5 this year.
A significantly different best 5.
Yes.
I would say the most intriguing one is Jameis Winston to me, just because of how it ended.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. Like, who cares? He's a backup quarterback. We have a franchise quarterback. Jameis Winston's not going to play. Yeah, he's a fun character. He's a fun story. He's a fun soundbite. He's all that stuff is cool. I like Jameis. I like him as a person. I have no problem with Jameis. But as far as the team, no impact at all. Like, Derek Carr is our starting quarterback. So the loss of Jameis Winston is absolutely nothing, barring an injury to Carr. And when Carr got hurt last year, Winston, I mean, it is what it is. So I like the guy. I think he's funny. I think he's cool. Great speaker, all that stuff. But I mean, beyond that, like, I don't think it's worth talking about from a football standpoint.
Cross, when you get to being a professional football player, and if your coach says do one thing and you do another, pretty much.
Ed Wilson to be wide receiver 3 for them, or at least I assume wide receiver 3 for them, at about $2.9 million, which again for the current.
Yeah, Willie Gay, Chase Young, great additions. Chase Young, 24 years old, former second overall pick. We need help in the pass rush department. He would be able to give that, hopefully, if he's healthy, if he produces. And if he does produce, this $13 million a year situation is going to go away. He'll be extended, and he'll sign some Carl Granderson type deal where it's like 5 years, whatever, like it'll be the same thing as Granderson, where all of a sudden Chase Young is a Saint. He's part of the long-term vision, which I hope happens.
Receiver market, that's what, 1/12 of what Justin Jefferson makes. So yeah, that seems all right for a guy as good as Ed Wilson to be your number 3. So yeah, overall, not a whole lot of crazy money spent.
Yeah.
Which for the Saints is probably a good thing because they're still trying.
That's also part of what the Saints do. They don't spend crazy amount of money because they don't usually bring in a ton of guys. Like the Saints kind of have their core. The Saints keep their core intact and they fill through free agency, but they don't go get they're not going to go try and find number 1 wide receiver or try and find a number 1 running back or try and find a number 1 cornerback or any of that stuff. They believe they have that in the house. They believe they have that in the building. That's why they invested as much as they did in Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, DeMario Davis, Cam Jordan, players like that, Derek Carr. So this is kind of how the Saints do it. They say, okay, we know we've got the guys. We know we have the nucleus. What do we need around that nucleus? Let's go get that in free agency.
Trying to get everything under control cap-wise for the long term, not just kind of playing musical chairs every single year. Like they're trying to get shit under control.
Aren't they always trying to get shit under control with the cap?
That's what they do.
But they're being responsible about it.
Yeah.
I'll give them that.
They do. It's a non-issue.
Responsible is a sliding scale in New Orleans.
It just feels like
That's
for the
true.
first time in a long time, Mickey is not writing checks that future Mickey is going to have to cash.
Yeah, that's a tomorrow Mickey problem.
They just took a year off from that, and they're like, all right,
ease up.
let's get shit settled for a little bit, and then we'll go back to spending crazy money in 2025. But
there we go.
Everything made sense. Everything was responsible. Again, the James thing was intriguing, but maybe I'm reading more into that than what's there. I just felt like the Saints were being fairly chill in free agency for once, which is a nice change of pace.
But if you look at the numbers that these hombres said earlier, right? If you look at all that, if you're Mickey Loomis and you're looking at the EPA and you're looking at passing yards per game and you're looking at all that stuff, why would you make huge changes? Why would you make enormous decisions? Everything's pretty cool except the results. So you bring in this new coaching staff, you bring in that is supposed to get you the results. Again, guys, if the Saints win the division last year and win 10 games, why would there be any mix-up? We lost on a tiebreaker. Derek Carr bust his shoulder. It is what it is. Variables happen in football. If you look at the underlying metrics and you see, like, damn, this team was a top 12 team. This team was on whatever the bootleg ranking system, top 6 team. Yeah, I mean, where do the changes need to be?
It is interesting to see how they devoted those dollars to the wide receiver room and how few those dollars are for literally 2 of their top, let's just say 4 starters, depending on whether or not they're going to roll A.T. Perry out there as wide receiver 3 or whether it's Ed Wilson. Like that, they do not have a lot of dollars outside of Olave, and even not for him because he's on his rookie contract. If you look at the overall money spent, Saints wide receiver core has got to be one of the lowest dollar units in the league.
It has to be.
Has to be.
They don't have anybody making more than. Actually, let me look at what Olave is making this year.
10.
I'm fascinated.
I was about to say, I don't think there's anybody making over 10. And when you start adding stuff like that into it, it's like, damn, the Saints are unbelievable when it comes to managing the cap.
By this, actually. So this year, Olave is making his base salary is $985,000.
Crazy.
His cap hit is $5.3 million, and he's the most expensive receiver.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
By far.
That's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I just said that.
It's unreal that you've got 4 guys that we kind of like, and you're paying like.
I mean, just take Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, and Cedric Wilson. Put them up against the Falcons wide receiver room. Who do you like more? I'd probably say the Saints. Now, throw on top of that, and the Saints, they're not paying a single one of those wide receivers over $5 million. That is nuts. Like the business, and that's why when people are like, well, salary cap, well, Mickey Loomis, well, this is like, we're doing some incredible business down here.
Less than $1 million.
Some incredible business.
For a couple of them.
For both your starters are making less than $1 million in salary.
Yeah.
Only 7 picks.
All right, so this is the draft class. We've talked about this at absolute length. I will let them talk a little bit about this. Y'all know what I think about Fuaga, Kool-Aid, and Rattler, but then we'll skip to the summary and season predictions part.
I don't even know how many. Yeah, they didn't have any third or fourth rounders. Yeah. They had a bunch of day 3 guys, only 2 picks in the first 50, and then didn't have another one till 150. But the values they got with those day 3 picks, they got several guys that could have gone in the 3rd or 4th round, and it would have made sense.
For sure.
I really like this draft from a strategic standpoint. I think one of the worst kept secrets in the league was that New Orleans was going to go tackle with their first pick. They needed it. It was the clear upgrade spot that they had to address. They hadn't done it in free agency or couldn't do it in free agency because they didn't have the dollars to do it. So it became very clear that Saints were going to get a tackle. They go out and get Talisi Fuaga, the offensive tackle out of Oregon State, whose high school is right over there, about 12 miles.
Tumwater?
No, he didn't go to Tumwater. He went to Mount Tahoma. He's actually a Tacoma kid. But had a great career at Oregon State. They get him at the 14th pick overall in the first round. They come back again with their only other top pick in the top 50, which is second round 41. They get
who could have been a first rounder.
Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner out of Alabama, the other corner, but it's hard to call him the other corner. Yes, Terrian went first, but Kool-Aid, extremely talented, fits very well with what they like to do. Pairing him with a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, that's a really nice tandem. It was a strong pick.
Yeah.
And then they drop all the way to the 5th round. Next pick is 150. They get Spencer Rattler, the very talented and well-traveled quarterback out of South Carolina, who's changed quite a bit over the last few years of his college career. I actually like that. I thought that, like you said, was a great grab where they got him. And is going to give them a viable option for QB2 or QB3 from now on. Could he be longer and there's more games?
Classic throwback, like 240 plus.
College football last year, one of the most productive tight ends in all of college football last.
All right, so they're just listing off the rookies. We've talked about it at length. We've talked about the rookies.
So, with all that being said, brings us to our final segment. 2 segments, really. So we ask and answer 2 different questions to end each episode. First question is, did this team get better?
Yes.
You're looking at how they finished last year.
100%.
Are they better, worse, or are they roughly the same?
They are better. You have to say they're better.
Based on, all the additions and subtractions combined. Like, did they kind of come out the same in the wash? There's debate about this, right? Because you're asking a team to get better when through a lot of metrics they should have been one of the 6 to 10 best teams in the league, right? But at the same time, they didn't produce results like that. So really the question is, if this team gets better, does that just mean they're going to play up to what their actual potential already was, right? Which is a kind of a different question, but also the same question.
Also, no. Like, the potential and all that stuff that the Saints had last year was predicated on what they were doing last year, as far as the scheme, the style, the system, all that stuff. If they do better in this new system, what does that better mean? They're not the same. They're not correlated. Like, playing better than they should have in Carmichael's system equals something totally different than playing better than they should in Kubiak's system. It's a completely different situation. So that alone is why they should play better. Then you have to factor in the human element of Carr being there for 2 years, or his second year. You have to factor that in. You have to factor in the miscommunication early on. You have to factor in, Carr just trying to get used to the receivers, trying to get used to the offensive line. That has to be part of this. That's a positive. The offensive line has gotten better. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It has gotten better. It was bad last year. We added Talisi Fuaga. Boom. Move Trevor Penning around. We'll see how that works out. But just adding Fuaga, it's better. Well, Ryan Ramczyk, he didn't play last year. That's not part of this. Okay, what else? Pass rush. We added Chase Young and Cam Jordan is healthy. That should be better. What else you got? You got running back. Alvin Kamara missed the first 3 games of the season. Wide zone run scheme. should be better. Like, all of that should be better. There's no way. Offensive staff, better than last year. Assistant coaches, better than last year. Everything should be better.
Again,
defense, really good last year. We had Willie Gay and Kool-Aid. Why wouldn't it be better?
Saints are weird. I know we've been spending an hour plus on this team, and we still don't really have a good answer for that. And so some of you are thinking, why the fuck did I do this?
I do have a good answer.
There's nuance here. And at the end of the day, I don't really know. Which is why I'm saying thumbs even. I'm not ready to say, yes, this team got better. Because they were already theoretically supposed to be a top 6 to 10 team.
Yep.
Is this team more likely than last year's team to be a top 6 to 10 team?
I'll put it to you like this. Let's pretend, and we're doing a Skrmetta metaphor here. Let's pretend you are a cook in a Bourbon Street dive bar. All right, you have Bourbon Street dive bar ingredients, Bourbon Street dive bar utensils, and you're pumping out like Michelin star level food. You are wildly overachieving what you should because of the ingredients and because of the surroundings and all that stuff. So then let's say you move to the French Laundry, Thomas Keller's restaurant, one of the best restaurants in the world. That would be like saying, well, they did overachieve last year. Nothing really changed. Why would I expect them to do anything differently? You have to factor in that they're in a whole new environment using whole new stuff. In this situation, the utensils and the ingredients are the scheme, are the strategy, are the playbook. You can't knock someone for overperforming in a bad situation. If they overperformed in a bad situation and you put them in a good situation, it would be perfectly fine to say, yeah, they probably will improve. And that's not even factoring in Chase Young. That's not even factoring in Kool-Aid. That's not even factoring in Willie Gay. That's not even factoring in Derek Carr's second year. That's strictly factoring in the new scenery and the new scheme, the new system, and all that. So I think Brett is missing the nuance here. I think that Pacifico he's drinking might be getting to his head.
I don't think I'm ready to say that. So I'm going to do the cop-out move here and say thumbs even, because quite frankly, in true New Orleans Saints fashion, I got no idea.
Yeah, I'm going to go thumbs even, but I'm not going to call it a cop-out move because I don't think it is. So I'll explain why I'm going to go thumbs even.
All right, go ahead.
I like the draft, but outside of Fuaga, none of them are likely to start.
And Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid's starting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a huge needle mover. They needed a tackle. They got a tackle. That's great.
How's it not a huge needle mover? They addressed their biggest need, tackle, with a guy who is a perfect scheme fit for what we are trying to do. It is a huge upgrade. I mean, it's like saying, well, the Broncos needed a quarterback and they got Bo Nix, but that's about it. It's like, what the hell? They have a new starting quarterback. Like they addressed their actual need. They addressed their biggest need. What else did you want them to do? These videos blow my mind when we spend an hour and they say, wow, love the new coaching staff, love the free agents, love the money management, love the draft, love all that. Oh, wow, Carmichael and company were terrible last year. Wow, this is going to be a whole different situation. Wow, they're going from bottom 3 play action to top 5. Wow, they're going from bottom 3 motion to top 5. Wow, they're doing all this stuff. I don't really see a lot of difference. So what do you mean? You just spent an hour laying out the difference.
Kool-Aid might start, but Paulson Adebo, he's got to displace him, and he's played pretty well. He's a great third corner. It's not that it's not an asset. It's like, how much are they going to get needle moving out of this draft right away? And the answer is not much. Fuaga is going to move the needle on the offensive line, but that's it. So it's some, but not a ton. They're going in the right direction, but looking at this roster, I can't say as I stack up last year's roster and this year's roster, like this one's clearly better. I can't say it's clearly worse either, which is why I'm going to go even. And they underachieved last year, so they might positively regress, which means get better, get back towards what they should be. But will it be enough? It's impossible to say, again, with the rest of the division having some improvement as well, and them just being the odd ducks that they are. And, they should be better. They have talent. They could have achieved. They didn't. They were in the middle on points, but then they had this huge burst at the end of the year. All in all, when you just sort of rinse and stir and shake it all out, it's about the same.
The only thing I think I can definitively say is if this team doesn't win double-digit games and make the playoffs, Dennis Allen's getting fired.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. If they win 9 games again and everything looks pretty good and everything seems to be firing and everything seems to be all right. I mean, 9 wins could win you the division. But if they win 9 games again and they're in the same situation as last year, I don't know if Allen gets fired. There would be a lot, and I've talked about this before, but it's a weird Sudoku puzzle because you're not going to fire Kubiak unless the offense is just I mean, that would be a disaster. You're not going to fire Kubiak. So if you're firing Dennis Allen, you either promote Klint Kubiak to head coach, and that seems like a big leap to have. Like, think about how good the offense would have to be for Kubiak to go from OC for his first year to head coach. And if the offense is that good, it's hard to imagine we're 9-8. But so if you fire Dennis Allen, you have to go get another defensive coordinator because you're not going to keep Joe Woods. If you're firing Dennis Allen, you're firing the entire defensive staff. So you're firing arguably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL to go get a lesser defensive coordinator or a head coach who is a defensive guy. Or you get a head coach who's like a man motivator like Dan Campbell, and then you go find a DC, which is a lot going on too. And if you get a head coach that's not a DC per se, like Dan Campbell, then maybe he wants his own offensive coordinator. And then we do it Klint Kubiak. So it's way trickier than people give that credit for. It's very difficult to just fire Dennis Allen, keep Klint Kubiak and fire Dennis Allen. It's hard to imagine the situation where that happens.
I think he is.
I don't
Because you look
disagree.
at last year, again, I think everybody in that building knows they should have been better than they were. They should have won more games than they did.
But again, like, everyone knows they should have won more games. We agree. That's why we fired our entire offensive staff. Like, 100%.
If there's 2 straight years of that,
Yeah,
he's getting fired.
it's possible. But again, New Orleans is weird, and they have a weird tolerance. There was a lot of people that said, hey, the offense was pretty stagnant 2 years ago. Like, what's Pete Carmichael still doing here? They were like, nope, we're running it back. And again, a lot of people were calling for his job last year. So we might look at it and say, look, if you get these same results, what are we doing here? Sometimes a team has a different lens. So I'm not going to say that's guaranteed. I'm going to say it's going to get looked at for sure if there's not an extraordinary circumstance that leads to, a very low win total.
It would be easier to get out of the Derek Carr contract and all that than it would to fire Dennis Allen.
So when looking at ceiling and floor, and again, this is
Ceiling is 7 games, or ceiling is 11
They
wins.
have a pretty narrow
10 to
cone.
11.
My
I'd be fine
difference
with
is
10.
like 3. There's some teams where it's 4 or 5.
Floor
games.
is 7,
Yeah,
I would
maybe
say.
sometimes 6 games of like it could go really well or really disastrously. I think the Saints are a more narrow cone. And so I put their ceiling at 10 and I put their floor
That's
at
fine.
7. No
that's
matter
fine.
what,
That's
they're going to be in the middle of the league for me.
Agreed.
And I think that's also why they frustrate me so much, is because I know no matter what, they're going to be in the middle of the league, which is also why I think there could be significant changes after this year. I wanted to look at some of these metrics and be like, do I do 11? Do I do 12? Because that's
12 is nuts. I mean, I think 12 is crazy. I think that, we've done the schedule before. It's going to come down, 10 wins / 11 wins is going to come down to the Rams and the Browns. Both those games are in New Orleans. Both those games are coin flip games. I don't care about the Dallas, Kansas City, Philadelphia. I don't care about those games. Those aren't supposed to be wins, but could we win them? Sure. But the Rams and the Browns are legitimate coin flip games. You're a point, anywhere between a point to 2 points dog at home. That's a winnable game. That is as coin flip as coin flip gets. So, you never know with injuries. You never know with stuff like that of who you're playing, backup quarterbacks, whatever. But 10 or 11 wins is going to come down to winning those games. If you told me right now that we beat the Browns and the Rams, I would say we probably win 11 games. If you told me we beat the Browns but not the Rams, I'd say we probably win 10 games. That's it. That's how I look at the season. If you told me we lose both of them, we're probably an 8 or 9 win team. Is how that would go.
statistically what they should have been, but at the same time, I'm like,
Do you believe that's going to happen with the Saints?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Not like Dennis Allen, Derek Carr. At some point, you have to be realistic about what this is, right? Solid team, could make the playoffs, could be a bitch and a half to beat, depending on how well they play on the offensive and defensive line. But at the same time, it's like, do I believe in it, though? Like, to really get to that upper echelon, do I believe in it? Nah, not really.
They are what they are, and that sounds like a cop-out, but I, too, have a ceiling of 10 and a floor of 7.
Yeah, I'll
start with the floor first.
Yeah, that's fine.
With a defense this good with very few changes and not a ton of big losses, some nice additions, it's hard for a team to be really, truly bad with a defense.
This is fine to me. Like, if because you're looking at this like, hey, be a little bit better. That's what we think the Saints are going to do this year. Be better. Be a little bit better. We think they've upgraded the roster. We think they've done all that stuff. So be a little bit better. But the schedule is a little bit harder. So be a little bit better. That is 10 or 11 wins. That is right there. Right? And it's a missed field goal here, turnover there. You never know. So, but we are probably good enough, just like last year. Like, it's hard for a team as talented as the Saints are to be truly bad. Regressing to 7 wins would be literally losing every coin flip game. So
defense that's that good. We're talking about a top 10 defense in every metric. Against the run, against the pass, and scoring. Like, that is a solid foundation to build a team on. It's not exciting. Fans don't love it all the time, but it is a very solid foundation for a team, and it means you're never going to be like bad. You're never going to be down in the 2-3 win category because your defense is just too good. Offense has to play better. They have to protect better. A lot of these young receivers have to blossom under the coach.
I mean, like their analytics say, if we're a top 15 offense and a top 10 defense, I don't care about any of the other stuff. Like, there's no way you can be that bad with that combination. If that's the combo, you're not going to be that bad.
Coaching that they've brought in, take to the new system, and that's the only way they're going to get towards that ceiling of 10. But I'm with you. When I start thinking about competition, I start thinking about who they are, who they have at quarterback especially, and I start thinking 12 wins?
12's a lot. 12's a lot. 12
seems rich to me. Is it possible? It's possible, but I think a much more likely ceiling is double-digit wins, 10, competing for the division title, which again gets you into the playoffs, and after that, all bets are off, especially if you have a strong defense. You can have a good day and advance. You can have a poor.
You have a top 10 defense hosting a playoff game. That's a good combination.
4 day and be one and done. I think that's a much more likely end point for the 2024 Saints.
Yeah, agreed.
They're fine.
Yeah.
Not every team in this series, are we going to look at them and be like Super Bowl contender?
Yeah.
And not every team are we going to look at in this series and be like, oh God, this year's going to be garbage.
100%. And I've said that before where, look, guys, here's the bottom line. Every team can't be the best team in the NFL. You do have to have the 11th best team, the 12th best team, the 13th best team, the 14th best team, the 15th best team. Sometimes you got to have that. And sometimes it is what it is. That's who the Saints are. The Saints are somewhere between 10 and probably 15th best team in the NFL. Now, you might say, well, you're just okay with mediocrity. No. First of all, quit slobbering all over your keyboard. Second of all, what I want to do is host a playoff game. Win the division. And if you host a playoff game and you have a great defense, you can win playoff games. You can go on a run. Just because you're the 10th best team in the NFL doesn't mean you can't go on a run. All right? So, now, granted, if you told me, well, the Saints are going to win 10 games, they're going to host a playoff game, they're going to win the first playoff game, a la the Buccaneers last year, would anyone say the Buccaneers had a mediocre season last year? Or do the Buccaneers have a season where it's like, damn, that's pretty nice. That's a celebrated season. I'm cool with that. So don't get so lost in like, like Ricky Bobby ain't coming through that door. You know what I mean? It's not you're either first or you're last. Like, you can be the 10th best team in the NFL. You can be the 11th best team in the NFL, division champion, host playoff game. That's perfectly fine given the situation. Given the Saints situation, I think that's perfectly fine, perfectly within reason to expect and root for.
Contender for the first pick.
Exactly. Contender for the first pick. This is one of those teams where it's dead in the middle and we're like, yeah, they're fine. They're good.
I'm with you.
They're okay.
They've demonstrated
there.
the ability to do it before. They're going to do it again.
Yeah.
For Saints fans, look, I hope that it's the 10 wins competing for the division title, that the
Same.
offense is exciting, that the team is, I'm not going to say watchable. They're always watchable, but watchable with a little bit less anxiety every Sunday.
Yeah.
It's more watchable with just less confusion.
That too.
Right? Less confusion, less anger. In some Saints fan circles, they'll say less embarrassment.
That too.
You know, looking at some of the shenanigans that happened with the team last year. And not that they're an embarrassing team. It's just there's a couple moments last year where like, guys, what are we doing?
What are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't know. God, weird team.
Very weird team.
Weird team. Solid team, but weird team. Saints fans, if you disagree with us, I don't blame you whatsoever. Your job is to, support your team and be a fan and be like, no, 12 wins. Like, we got this. Fuck the Falcons. We're winning the South. Like, I get it. That is your job.
10 wins win the South. There you go. 11 wins win the South. Ladies and gentlemen, my God, an hour and 10 minutes. Jesus. I mean, this is what happens when you send me an hour and 5-minute video. It's going to get long. It's going to be lengthy. My goodness, I'm going to have to get a Ricola drop, a lozenge after this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Get on down in the comments below. We had covered a lot. Let me know what you think and why the Saints are the most confusing team in the NFL. Get on down there. I will see you in the next video.